Welcome to Accelerate Your Dental Practice, the show for dental professionals ready to grow smarter, faster, and stronger. Hosted by Michelle Affanato of Affinity Management Consulting and Malika Azargoon of Zar Dental Consulting. Each episode delivers practical strategies and expert advice to help you streamline operations, increase profitability, and reduce stress. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Accelerate Your Dental Practice. Today, Malika and I are going to be touching on a topic that might be a little sensitive to some doctors. And I feel like some doctors may not even realize that it's happening to them. But we're going to talk a lot about what does it actually cost you, the doctor, when you are too nice to your employees? And you're probably thinking what do you mean? Aren't I supposed to be nice to my employees? Yes. But we're talking about not holding people accountable for things or, allowing certain things to happen because maybe they are a senior employee that you would let go for them, but maybe not let go for someone else. So I want to start off because this has been a hot topic with a lot of my clients, at least this whole year, but probably a little bit longer. But I just feel like it's every conversation I have with them these days. And I know Malika's facing it as well, is attendance. I have many offices where certain people do not get reprimanded for coming in late, where others, if they're 1 or 2 minutes late, the doctor or the manager's all over them. So fairness to the team, right? It doesn't matter if somebody lives 5 minutes down the road or they're commuting an hour. When they accept the job, right, they're accepting the hour for that. So if they accept it and say, yeah, I can work these hours, then they should be held to those hours. And when they're tardy, it needs to be addressed. Because when you start favoring one employee over another, just like if you were a parent favoring one child over another, it doesn't turn out well for you.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it there, Michelle. Being on time, I always remember my parents used to say, if you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you are on time. So yes, you can definitely give your employees a grace period before the time they need to be there. For example, if your huddle is at 7:45 and you want them to be there by 7:30, saying anytime between 7:30 and 7:35 is on time. Anytime after that, you're considered late. So you can give that grace period, but your grace period cannot be after 7:45 because your patients, let's say, come at 8 a.m. So being clear about that, again, that goes back to your onboarding and your handbook and not letting it go. Because I have a situation, I'm sure, Michelle, you hear this all the time. Well, Malika, Sarah's a single mom and has 3 kids, so I get it. Well, let me tell you, your staff that maybe don't even have kids or have adult children, they're over it. And we get the comments from these team members saying, well, are you going to address this with our doctor? Because we are always on time. Because we don't have kids, it doesn't mean it's okay for us to always be the first one in and open the office and turn on the compressor and do all of that when the other individual that has kids is always late. And it becomes resentment between your team members. So that's costing you a lot because now you have a culture issue because you're being too nice to one versus the other because you feel bad for that team member. And I think to your point, Michelle, is that they took that job 45 minutes away or 5 minutes away. They accepted that position and they know the hours and all that information was pretty clear and should have been very clear during the onboarding. So there's no surprises. So then when one does it, the rest does it. And then guess what? If your team is late, that means you're running late of bringing patients back most likely. And then you can't keep your patients accountable if they're late. Because what are they going to turn around and tell you? They're going to be like, well, Dr. Smith is always late. So I don't understand why you now want to charge me or not see me because I am late. Then you're kind of put in a very awkward position. Now you have an upset patient. Or now you have a team member that is always late. So it's domino effects. So it's really important to be very clear and not too nice because even if you end up constantly seeing these patients that are late, what happens? Goes into your lunch after hours. Now your staff are again upset because you're being too nice. You're allowing it. You're allowing this behavior all across.
Yes, absolutely. And I think It's hard for doctors, right? Because I love working with dentists because they have the biggest, kindest hearts. They really do.
They do.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
Almost to a detriment sometimes.
Yeah.
And you do understand, like you have a family too, or you're a single mom. I get it, right? But they have a responsibility too. And that responsibility is to be on time and be prepared for the first patient. The other thing that I think is also challenging is when some team members are pulling more weight than other team members. When you have multiple people up front and they all have similar tasks, but the team knows, and they probably come to you and said like, hey, Susie over here, like, she's not completing her job. I always have to do the consents for her. I'm always printing out the route sheets for her, or like, she's not doing the post-op calls, so I'm always having to do it. When team members have to pick up slack for other team members, they don't mind doing it occasionally. Everybody gets busy. We know the day never goes exactly how we want it to go. But when it's something that they know is every day and now it's become their responsibility, and that team member is not being spoken to or held accountable or retrained in their role, then you get resentment from the team. And that's when you start to get the quiet quitting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is costly because you can lose some really great team members because of that.
Yeah, and what happens is a lot of times my clients will have a panic moment of, oh my gosh, what do I do? And sadly, a lot of times it's too late. Because, even when I get involved, let's say, and I, talk to the team member, their comment usually to me is, this behavior is not going to change. I've seen it happen before with another team member, and my doctor is just too nice and it allows this. Or this team member is taking advantage of my doctor, and I cannot continue to watch this happen. So, and I can't continue to pull the weight. Because I always tell my clients this, I'm like, there's so many dental offices around you. They'll just go to the next one. A lot of times these staff members are not emotionally attached. We want them sometimes to be, but a lot of times they're just not. Like I had an office assistant of 30 some years overnight left because she took it. And then just because she knew that she couldn't do it face to face to her doctor because it was so many years of it, that she just left a key and a note and left. It's really sad, but she was done because she kept saying, I keep pulling the weight. I'm the first one in, the last one out. And I bring it up and nothing is happening. So that silent quitting literally happened, just like you said it. And it was pretty detrimental to the practice because it wasn't just the team and the assisting, the patients were so bonded to this assistant that, the patients were asking, where is she? Where is she? So I think it's, addressing it and having conversation and really making the change. And sometimes I get it. I hate change and change is scary. But if we don't do it soon enough and let it slip through the crack, the cost of it, to your point, Michelle, is losing that great front desk, assistant, manager, whoever, hygienist. It could be anyone. I've even seen doctors quit because of it.
Yes.
I've even seen associates quit because they're like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I can't be that person because my boss, my colleague just doesn't put boundaries in place. And he or she's just too nice and I can't continue to watch this happen.
It's a shame, right? Because I know a lot of doctors want to run their practice like a family, right? I want my team to be like a family. And I get it. But ultimately, it's a business, right? It's a business and we have to run it like a business, which is why having a handbook, a clearly defined handbook that is followed, right? It's not like, hey, we create the handbook when they're a new hire, they sign it and we never refer back to it. No, you have to hold them accountable to the handbook. Having clearly defined job descriptions and not buckling when somebody comes to you who has poor attendance or is not doing their job and they come to you and say, hey, I've been here 365 days, where's my raise? Right? Having consistent conversations and holding them accountable for their job, right? Because a raise should be based on, in my opinion, performance and the financial health of the practice. But so many doctors and managers don't do a great job at documenting all the things. Like, Susie mentioned that, Linda was coming in late and then she was on her phone for half the morning and not getting her job done. And then at the end of the day, rushing around asking everybody for, like, if those things don't get documented, what do you typically remember when you're doing a performance review? What happened in the last 30 days, right? Like what's ever fresh in your mind. And if they were on their best behavior, then they get a raise when they might not have necessarily deserved a raise or as much of a raise.
Yeah.
So I think like having clearly defined expectations and holding people accountable. And I want to talk a little bit about accountability because people think, doctors and staff members feel like if they're being held accountable, they're being punished. And why? It's because it's not clear to them what they're accountable to. Right? Accountability is not punishment. It's keeping you on track and making sure that everybody on the team is pulling their weight.
Absolutely. And I think that if that is clear again in your handbook, and I always say, Michelle, like, go back to your mission statement and your core values. I truly believe that needs to constantly come back into your meetings and conversation. Because the minute you know what your core values are and what your mission statement is, and you repeat that, that is aligned and it links with your accountability. Because if one of your core values is communication, so that goes into accountability. Yes. If one of your core values is family, okay, is your practice running as like a family? And what are the issues that is not, and how do we work as a team for that to happen? And I always say, have your team say it themselves how they want to be held accountable. Because if they're part of the decision making and it's literally written down, and I even say they're sign off on it, then when they're held accountable, they can't really challenge you and have an attitude because they're the one who said, Doc, if I'm late or if we are all late, we shouldn't get bonus. If we're late more than twice, that's accountability. Because then when they don't get their bonus, they're not huffing and puffing and having a meltdown because you're being mean. No, because they literally agreed to the fact that when you're late twice, for example, you don't qualify for the bonus anymore. That's accountability. Or if I'm late, let's say if you guys are planning a CE course outside and where it's like going on a plane or whatever it is, you don't qualify to go to that CE course.
Yeah.
That's accountability. And I think a lot of times, to your point, that people feel like they're being punished or they're being put in timeout. Well, it's because there was no conversation about the protocols of accountability for the practice. And that should be across the board to everybody. Next shouldn't be like only the clinical team or only the assistants, because we can't talk to the hygienist because they're going to get offended and we can't afford to lose the hygienist. No. This is across the board. Everybody on the team needs to be held accountable.
Yes. And I know it's challenging. Believe me, I know it's challenging. And especially if you are a doctor that doesn't have a manager to help you with this, you need to empower yourself. Remember, it's your name on the door, right? It's you who signs the checks. So it's important. And again, it's not punishing. It's just like, if everybody does their job, things should run very smoothly. If everybody knows what's expected, everything should run smoothly. And I have come across instances where a doctor and a manager are on two different pages, right? Priority wise or communication wise. And what happens is if the two leaders of the practice are not on the same page, then it's going to show to the rest of the team, right? And what we don't want to happen is when this stuff happens and they're like, well, they only hold this person accountable, or like, we'll only have to do this. Like, we just had a meeting. We're only going to have to do it for a day or two. And then we can go back to our normal ways, or they see things that are not addressed. Unfortunately, the team starts to lose respect for those in leadership. You don't know how many meetings that I have and team members speak up and say like, hey, we're on board to do whatever we want, whatever you want us to do. But in the past, everybody just goes back to doing things the original way. So like, we feel like maybe this is a waste of time to have this conversation because nothing's going to change anyways.
Yeah.
So to Malika's point about the mission and the core values, like that's why you're there. No doctor wants to have to micromanage anybody. I don't want you spending your time doing that. You need to be doing dentistry. But if the team doesn't know what's expected of them or knows like, there's no consequences if I don't do my job, you lose control over it. It creates a bad culture. You have quiet quitting, or you just have people that are going to show up every day and do the bare minimum for you. And that is extremely costly to the practice because they won't care. They'll let people cancel left and right. They'll let people leave without paying. They'll let people leave without scheduling. They're not going to put the effort in because there's no consequences for them.
And you can see it in their body language and their even on their voice. When I call an office, I can tell from the way they answer the phone how they are. I mean, locally, I had a meeting with a potential client, and I will never forget this. It was so powerful for me to even see it. I walked in. This doctor was on the non-patient day. He said, "Will you meet with me? I have some concerns." And he was so close to me that I was like, "You know what? I'll come into your office." And I'm so glad I did. I walked in. There was a front desk person in the front, looked up at me, didn't say hello to me, continued to still talk on the phone, then looks up and says, "Yes, I could have been a patient. He should have no idea who I am." And I did. I was like in shock, and I'm like, "Hi, I have a meeting with this doctor," and she's like, "If you're a rep, we don't have time for it." I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is really happening." And
Right.
anyways, long story short, she slams the phone and she goes, "Okay, let me see if I can get him for you. It wasn't on the schedule, so I'm not sure why you're here." Goes and gets the doctor, and the first thing the doctor tells me was, I feel like I'm bullied by my team. I need your help. I don't. And literally, it's exactly what had happened when I walked in. And I even said immediately, I said, I could have been a new patient walking off the street to come and make an appointment. I said, and I said, this comes down to the core of your expectations, your core values, your mission, your accountability. There was nothing there. There was nothing, no, they were walking all over him. But it really comes down to you and you following through with it. You can put accountability rules in place. You can put, you know, circumstances and benchmarks in place. But if you're not yourself showing up on time, yourself is not having the positive attitude or communicating or follow through, the staff is going to be like, whatever. He's like that for a day, and then he goes back to his regular routines. Just ignore him. Because I hear it all the time. They're like, Malika,
Yep.
I don't know why you're even having this meeting with us because this will only last for a week. He or she will go back to their original habits. So, to you guys, leaders that are listening, you have to stick to it because literally they're like your children. The team is like your children. They know they're smarter than you think. They know when you go back to your habit, and that becomes so costly for your practice because the minute you revert back to the previous habits of the practice where people can be late, they can walk in when they want. I don't know, they can wear what they want. Come in with open toe shoes, whatever that issue is. The next time you try to implement something else in their mind, they're like, yeah, yeah, keep talking like this is going to change. They're not going to take you seriously. Again, to your point, Michelle, it is so costly to your business because that is your reputation in the community. That is your reputation when you're hiring, when you want to retain staff, or you're trying to get more new patients. Because sometimes a comment will be from patients like, "Oh, the front desk is just not nice and perfect. I love the doctor. He or she's such a great dentist, but the front desk is just so sloppy and rude. I don't know. I don't even want to call there to talk to them. You don't want that. And if
Right.
your behavior is, reverts back to whatever it was, and you were allowing things, you're losing patients. You can't retain staff, and you can't get new ones either.
Yeah. That's a big challenge. And I do see that a lot, So I think it's good to do a little self reflection as a business owner
Mhm.
and just kind of look like when you look back and see like how much staff turnover you had in the past year, you kind of have to look back and be like, okay, where did I go wrong as an owner, right? It's not that you hired the wrong people. It could be that you are allowing certain things to happen and these new hires are held to a different standard as, than the senior people. It could be you don't have a great onboarding process. The expectations aren't clear. There's no accountability. So when you look at, hey, we lost this many people this year and had to rehire. And it was really challenging for us to find people. It goes back to what Malika was saying, is like your reputation in the community, right? If you have a reputation for a lot of turnover, it's going to make good employees question whether they should go and work with them. If you have a great reputation, right, Malika, we were talking about this before, like share what you were saying about
I mean, we had an ad out for a client. I mean, it made me smile. My team calls me and they're like, Malika, we have people messaging saying, how can I work for her? It's a dream of mine to work for this doctor. I mean, can we say, wow, like what a reputation. And this individual, my client, has been opened her practice 3 years ago, and she's grown because of her reputation, not only for patients, but like staff. We had people begging. They were like, I'll take less money than what I'm making right now. So because I know how amazing she is as a boss and as a clinician. So that's what you need to look at and be honest with yourself is your office that office? And if it's not, what can you do to get there? Because
right.
anybody, any of the listeners, any of our clients can get there. But let's look within. What is it that makes your team not want to be there? What is it that makes your team or team members quit? What is that? Is it the culture? Is it the communication? Is it the financial? Is it the clinical work? What is it? Because I think any of that is fixable, Michelle. I don't think anything cannot, like, there's nothing in a practice that cannot be fixed. But that you as a leader and owner has to, number one, look within and be honest. Because I always say, if somebody quits, you have to be first, blame yourself. First, look within and say, have I and my team and my practice provided all the tools to make this individual be successful? And hence the reason I truly believe this client of mine wants people working for her, because she checks off a lot of these boxes. She's not giving them a sign-on bonus. She doesn't have the best benefits. It's none of that. It's genuinely the practice and what she has created. That culture in that office wants people to be in there. And that's what I think everybody should aim for, because the minute you have that, the growth is effortless, honestly. It just flows. I always look at practices that have the same number of chairs and potentially same lineup of insurances and so on. And I see one that's thriving and one is that potentially trying to get somewhere financially. And number one thing I think is what causes that difference is the culture and the team.
Yes.
That combination, if it's going well, the rest is effortless. It really just comes in. It just flows in. And I think that's when you're honest and say, okay, am I doing all of that as an owner? Because you're the first stop of people looking at. It doesn't matter if you're disconnected from the management part and you have a phenomenal manager. That's awesome. But end of the day, you are the boss. Your name is on the door. So if you are not present, you are not allowing, your manager to even make these decisions and allow these, accountability or benchmarks, then you can be the nicest person in the world, like you brought up, Michelle, earlier. But being too nice also is costly. It doesn't work. I get it. It's nice to be nice. I mean, who doesn't like a nice person? But human nature, we're going to take advantage of it. It's just human nature. We're like, oh, he's really nice. I mean, I've done it. I'm like, oh, like my kids say this. My son that's a senior says it right now. Oh, that teacher, he's so nice, Mom. Even if I turn in my homework late, he won't mark me late. That's not okay either. That's too nice, because now the students are taking advantage of this poor teacher. There has to be limitations to everything.
And you have to have rules, right? Guidelines.
Yes.
But you don't have to be so rigid and like the enforcer that we are humans, right? And we have emotions and, we have good days and we have bad days, right? But you can have rules like that with it still feeling like a family in there, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have rules in your family, like, hey, you have a curfew or, hey, you have to do these chores, right? What happens? One person ends up doing all the work. And then that person at the end of the week, at the end of the month, like cracks, right? And they're like,
Michelle, in our marriages, what happens?
Yeah.
If I am constantly washing the dishes after dinner, after a while, I'm going to say, I'm done. That's
Right.
not fair. We both work. Like we put the line in the sand all naturally, professionally or personally. Like
Yeah.
I'm tired of, be the one do the laundry. Like if I'm gonna put it in the laundry, you need to fold or vice. Like we gotta find a balance because after a while we're just like, okay, this is not fair, you know, and it causes friction. It's just a
Yeah.
natural reaction to it.
And it does the same thing in the team. So
Yeah,
Malik and I have been doing this a really long time. We've worked with enough doctors. Like, doctors don't go to school to learn how to run a business, right? Even your undergrad stuff is usually science based,
right.
right? So when you go to dental school, you're learning how to be a great clinician. But when you get out into the real world, I've seen some practices where the owner doctor is so nice and so generous and starts to mentor the associate and teach them about running a business and stuff like that. And I've seen others that shut them down completely and just want them to come in, do their dentistry, and leave. So you're not getting a ton of business ownership, leadership training anywhere in that path leading up to practice ownership. So it's okay to ask for help if you need it, right? Hiring a coach, hiring a consultant, yes, it's an investment. But if you can get your ship up straight and you can, get your team doing what they need to do, the investment pays for itself because you're not losing good team members. You're not letting production walk out the door or collection walk out the door. You've got everybody in order and things are running as smoothly as they can.
Yeah, 100%. And it shows in everything. As you said, the cost of it comes out. You see it when you have that connection with your team and there's limitations put into place. It reflects on your numbers. That's just what it does, honestly. Because I'm sure,
Yep.
Michelle, you've been in many practices where you're like, oh my God, this guy's a natural. He's so good at it. This is just
Yes.
comes and goes. Or he's listening. And like when I coach doctors that they switch and I see them now lean in and do those accountability tools or communication. And the numbers are just, it's not me putting a formula in and saying,
Yeah.
okay, 8 of these times 2 of these. No, it's none of that. It's, this. It's generally the minute that switch happens between leadership and the team is like all excited, they're leaning in and they're all working cohesively, and really doctors being vulnerable. It's okay to be
Yeah.
vulnerable. I think to your point, those that are too stiff and like don't want to show emotions, that doesn't work either. You have to find a happy medium.
Yeah. It's important. And, it's one of those things that can make or break a practice on, the accountability. I've seen plenty of offices that when I look at them, the potential that practice has, and then I look at the staff and how the practice is run, and I know that they're only going to get so far because they're only going to get so much. So, you know, I think that, it's the end of the year. It's a great time to do some self-reflecting. Not saying go in January 1st and change everything
The
completely on the team
bulldozer,
because
you
that's
go
another
in
way.
and
That's another way to lose everybody. But think about some small changes, small accountabilities that you can put into place and gradually introduce more. If you're going to introduce something, you've got to make a commitment to stick to it for, I usually say 60 days minimum. You have to do it this way for 60 days. Now, if it's a complete disaster, you fix it and you pivot. But if it's just because people are like, I don't like it yet, I'm scared to do this, like this isn't how we used to do it, I'm so comfortable the other way, then you need to hold them accountable and remind them. Remember, we had a meeting about this. We talked about some non-negotiables, how we're going to move the practice forward and how we're going to hold each other accountable, meaning the team can hold the doctor accountable too
yeah,
for it and really work towards it. And at the end of the 60 days, 9 times out of 10, I bet you once they get comfortable, the team is going to be like, oh my gosh, this is saving me so much time through the day. Or like, thank you that I have help from other people because my workload is a little lighter, which allows me to focus more on this, which is the most important in my role. So like Malika said earlier, like nobody likes change, right? I always go back to the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Read it once a year, right? Because nobody likes change. It's how you adapt to it. is what's going to make you successful in practice ownership. And having a team that respects you and feels like they're heard and they're all held to the same standards. And there's no favoritism. And when you do that, I guarantee you will see an increase in production and revenue.
100%. And everybody needs structure. Always remember that. Everybody wants some structure. Think about yourself when you wake up in the morning. You like to wake up certain time. I have a schedule. The days that you don't have anything to do and there's nothing on your schedule, what happens? Obviously, we all deserve a day like that, but that usually ends up being on your day off or your weekend. But if you have structure in place, you're more productive. And your team needs it as much as you do.
So, being that to the end of the year, do some self-reflecting, see what you can put in place in the new year, and stick to it. Commit. We have, team agreements that everybody signs, and that's your posted up in the break room or something. And that is all of your agreement to help each other stick to what is there. And don't be afraid that some team members, when you start to hold them accountable, because they're going to be the ones who know that they're just coasting through, they may take offense to it. They may not be happy with it, and you may lose a few. But the real rock stars will step up their game. They will be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how this was affecting everything else, and they'll step up. So really don't be afraid to do that, because if you continue to do this, think about how much it's costing the practice financially and how much it's costing you when you lose a good team player because of that.
Absolutely.
All right. Until next time, I hope you got some good tips out of this. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Accelerate Your Dental Practice. To learn more about your hosts and explore consulting services tailored to your practice, visit affinitymanagement.co for Michelle Affanato and zardentalconsulting.com for Malika Azargoon. Be sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast. And join us next time for more tools, tips, and strategies to help you accelerate your dental practice.